Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail, where you can, in turn, inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. I am your running host, Dean Thompson, and we're here to talk about running. And we're here to talk about faith. We're here to combine two of our favorite things. And once again, it's Run for God founder, Mitchell Hollis.
Thanks for having me, Dean. How are you?
I'm great.
I think it was last week at this same time that I saw you.
Yeah.
I don't think we saw each other all this week, really.
I missed a track meet. I hate missing track meets.
Yeah, that's the reason I didn't see you again, because usually I see you out on the track somewhere.
Yeah.
But welcome back.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be back. We've been busy. We had our own track meet last week, and that went well. We'll talk a little bit about that, but the weather has been crazy
all over the board,
obviously. Yeah. So I saw this comedian the other day. It was hilarious. He said, I love spring. He said, it may be my favorite day of the year.
That's about right around here. I mean, I think this week alone, it was down in the 30s the other morning. And today it's supposed to be today or tomorrow it's supposed to be in the 80s, mid-high 80s. So it's like, but I think our cold weather is gone. Maybe we may have one more cold snap, but I don't think we'll get any more frost. Yeah. This time of year in the South, everything blooms, and then you get a hard frost and it kills everything, and then everything blooms and it frosts and kills everything. So it's a vicious cycle around here. But I love this time of year. I just love getting out in the yard and doing something. I
just know the colder it gets, when this diet that I've been on, this plant-based diet I've been on for almost 2 years now. Mm-hmm. It's made me leaner, which is great. Sure. From a running standpoint, from a fitness standpoint, just from a general feeling standpoint, it's great. But the cold weather, I feel like it just goes right through my bones. Yeah. So
now you know why grizzly bears don't live on that diet.
That's exactly that makes sense.
They die during hibernation.
It's all coming together.
Yeah. Hey, before we get on with the podcast, let's talk about our sponsor this week. Again, if you own a business out there and you want to support Run for God and allow us to support your business, send an email to runlanehollis@gmail.com and he'll get you all the information. But this one this week is from Jess Burgess Framing Company. I've known these guys for a long time. With the housing market at a recent high right now, having a reliable framing crew is essential. Someone who is honest, does what they say they will do, and someone who can get the job done with excellence. Jess Burgess Framing Company has all these qualities, so if you're a developer or contractor in the North Georgia area, give Jess Burgess a call for the best framing crew around. I literally see these guys every day, and they're great guys. And if you got any needs for framing, give them a call.
They're the dudes.
They are, for sure.
We had a Facebook post last week it's a real short one, but it says a lot. And so Jessica Weaver Stoll says she is feeling lost. She says, while I know this is an unstructured 2-week break, has anyone else found this to be an extremely long week? I've thrown in a few walks, but dang, I'm ready to get to run again.
Yeah. I tell you what, I mean, to her point, that's what we wanted people to feel.
Yes.
You kind of get that because, let's be honest, by the end of a 12-week training period, mentally you're kind of just blah.
Yeah.
And what we want is that vigor, that excitement to come back. And so that's, last year we did a 1-week break. Yeah. And we kind of made a calculated decision this year to have a one off, which you need every now and then, and then one unstructured to kind of do your own thing. And so that's exactly where we wanted you to be, Jessica. So if you're listening, you were spot on when you wrote that.
Yeah.
So hopefully she's back into the 10K now and found that vigor again.
Yeah. And we all need a little bit of time off. And you mentioned it's not just physical. No. It's also mental.
It's probably just as much mental.
Yeah, I would say so. Even me, of course, everybody knows I've run every day, almost every day for the last 10 years. But my time off looks different than most people's. You know, a lot of people's time off means I'm not going to run for a week.
Yeah.
My time off means I'm just going to run really easy. I'm not going to worry about the number of miles I run. I'm just going to get in a few miles a day and just not worry about my pace or anything else, and just have fun with it. And that's like a week off to me, because mentally it's refreshing to not worry about pace or anything like that. So if you're out there and you're saying, I don't want to take any time off, and I get it. But you can take time off in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of time off, Holly mentioned this last night that we needed to give everybody an update. She's actually listening to Lane and Rebecca's podcast right now, and we need to give an update because I mean, you and Lane and Rebecca were talking about Rebecca's foot and how, you know, it's not broke. You said it in the podcast. We'll come to find out it's broke.
Yeah.
So Rebecca has gotten a little worse. At least she found out hers is broke. Lane started running again yesterday. Yeah. He was so excited to get out, and actually he did 2 miles.
Did it go well?
It went well. Went easy. He's going to do, he's been running some on the underwater treadmill. Yeah. At a friend of ours. But he's had these shoes. He bought this brand new pair of shoes literally the day or two before he stopped running. So he's had to sit and look at that brand new pair of shoes for 6 weeks now.
Oh, wow.
And it's killed him. So he was excited to get, but it went well, felt good.
Yeah.
So we're going to really take our time and ease back into it, because there's nothing huge coming up. So there's no need to rush anything. So, just an update on Rebecca. Her foot is indeed broken. If you listen to that podcast, they were talking about how it wasn't broken. Yeah,
because we honestly did, and we did the tests and things, and it showed that it wasn't broken. But then when we went and had the X-ray just to make sure, we didn't want to run it on something that was broken, and sure enough,
right.
And not only is it broken, but I was talking with a trainer just yesterday, and she said it's broken. It was pretty good.
Well, she told me last night she was trying to make the case to the trainer for her to be able to run conference, because it couldn't hurt it that much more worse. And the trainer was like, yeah, it could.
Yeah. So, and I love that spirit.
She's a tough cookie.
She really is. And she loves to be a part of the team. That's the thing about Rebecca, is that from a team standpoint, we've got a couple of girls who are always looking for a little bit extra. I don't remember what it was, but there was something going on the other day. We were doing a community service event. Mm-hmm. We were packing some bags, and I was waiting. Things were getting just piled up in one particular area, and most of the girls were they weren't paying. They were just doing their part, and they were piling stuff up. And I was wondering if anybody was going to notice, and it was Rebecca. Rebecca was the one that noticed. Oh, somebody needs some help over here.
Yeah,
and it's great to see.
Yeah,
somebody who cares about other people like that.
Sure is.
Well, we had a trivia question last week. And again, I think I mentioned last week that we may have had this one before, but this one's so good that I wanted to say it again.
You asked me last week if I knew this one, and I said no. But now that I see it,
you're like,
subconsciously I did. I was like, oh, yeah, I knew that.
The question was, when was the first women's Olympic marathon and who won it? And the answer was, it was held in 1984 at the games in Los Angeles, and it was Joan Benoit Samuelson. And it obviously took long enough. The men's marathon started in 1896.
Yeah.
It took a little while for the women to catch up. And not that the women were behind. The women were been clamoring for it for years. And it was thought that women couldn't run as far as men, which in today's world sounds ridiculous to say it, because what we know today is actually women can run probably longer than men can. And so it's just an interesting thought, and how much we've evolved in the way that we think about things. But her time, Joan Benoit Samuelson's time in this race, was 2:24:52. It's still the fourth fastest women's marathon ever, and this was way back in 1984. She ran that 3 minutes faster than the time that won the last Olympics. And if you've ever been in L.A. in the summertime, which is where she ran this, you'll know it's hot in L.A. in the summertime. Sure. It was hot at this marathon. So a lot of people look at that and they go, well, the weather probably was favorable for her. No, No, it was not favorable. It was crazy, crazy hot. It just, I don't think we had an appreciation for how good she was at the time. She seemed to have this ability to run through that heat really well. And I remember during the race, I remember her using these sponges. She'd tuck them into her shorts, and then she'd pull them out and she'd squeeze them out over her head. And she tried to work on staying cool that whole race. But there were some other good marathoners at that time. I remember Greta Weitz, Ingrid Christensen. There was one more I can't remember, but there were some really good marathoners in that time. But Joni was just in a class by herself. She was so good, and it was great. She was always shorter than everybody else. Joan's only about 5'2", so she's a little bitty thing.
So, if it was 1984 when women's marathon hit the Olympics, when did you start seeing women's marathon kind of on the world stage outside the Olympics? I assume it was just in the few years prior to that, or?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there wasn't the first woman to take part in the Boston Marathon wasn't until somewhere around 1970. I can't remember the exact year, but somewhere around 1970 is when women actually officially, when Catherine
were
Switzer,
allowed to.
Yeah, when Catherine Switzer, is that who it was?
The famous picture.
Yeah, the famous picture, and entering a race with just an initial instead of her whole name. So it's been it hadn't been too long at that point in time, which is it's kind of a shame, but at the same time, it's fun to see the women, the world record progression and stuff, and watching, the women's world record now is 2:14.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's insane.
In the 1984 Olympics, the winning time was probably not 5 minutes faster than that.
Yeah.
So for the men,
who holds the current women's world record?
Brigid Kosgei.
Okay.
She's a Kenyan.
Okay.
But we're going to talk some more about some Boston Marathon stuff here in a little bit. But anyway, Joni burst onto the marathon scene back in 1979 in the Boston Marathon, when all of a sudden nobody knew who she was, and she cut 8 minutes off the course record in one race. She ran a 2:35 at Boston, which was unheard of. But in 1984, in this first women's Olympic marathon, she almost didn't run it. She had arthroscopic surgery on her knee 17 days before the Olympic trials.
Wow.
17 days. And then she comes out and wins the Olympic trials, and then wins the Olympics 3 months later. So, yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
It really is.
Because, I mean, arthroscopic, it's not hugely invasive, but to an elite marathon runner, that's a pretty serious little procedure.
Yeah.
2.5 weeks before the Olympics. What made her do it then? Why did she do that 17 days early? Do you know? Or
she got to feeling better than she thought she was.
Really?
And she thought, I think I can try it. And
but why did she decide to have the
surgery? I don't know. I don't know the story behind that. That's a good question. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
But apparently she felt like she needed to, and I'm sure it was a minor thing, but still.
Yeah.
Just digging into your knee there seems like it would
anything
be detrimental.
Going behind your kneecap 2.5 weeks before the Olympics, I would think is kind of rises to the not minor stage.
Yeah. And of course, I've told the story before about me running Boston one year. In I want to say 2014, maybe it was, and I'm running Boston. I'm running at about 6:30 pace ish.
This is the lady.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm putting two and two together.
Yeah. I'm running about 6:30 pace, and at 4 miles, I pull up, and there's a gray-haired lady ahead of me, and I'm thinking, what in the world is this? She must have started earlier.
Too fast.
Yeah. And I thought, this lady's going to die. And but I ran up next to her and realized, oh my goodness, this is Joni. And so she ran 2:52 that year.
Yeah. How old?
And she was like 61. And so she holds the. No, I don't think she's quite that old yet. But she holds the 55 to 59 age group. She ran 2:50 at the Boston Marathon in the 55 to 59 age group. So it's nice to see her being competitive at an older age. So many of the elite folks, when they get older, they stop competing and you don't see them anymore, and they're coaching or they're doing other stuff. They're usually involved in the sport, but they're not being competitive.
So where does she live now?
She still lives in Maine.
Okay.
She has always lived in Maine, and she still lives in Maine. Yep, she's still up there.
That's pretty cool.
Yep, it is pretty cool. So we've got this the 10K challenge portion of our couch to marathon journey has kicked off.
Yeah,
and
the 10K portion is going. We're several weeks into that now. The 5K challenge that started in early April is well underway now. We're about to start promoting the next 5K challenge that's going to be coming up in a few months. So if you're out there, and I know you are out there, if you're out there and you've thought, I wonder what that would look like in my community. In case you didn't know, where Run for God began was the 5K challenge. Instructors would buy this instructor's kit and teach it all across the country. We've kind of changed in the way we do things nowadays, and you don't necessarily have to have an instructor's kit, but you can still lead the 5K challenge in your community. Even if you're doing the marathon challenge, even if you're walking the marathon, you can teach the 5K challenge for runners in your community. And so go to runforgod.com and check that out. Click on the 5K challenge and see about teaching it in your area. It's we say it all the time, Dean, whether you're taking the class or teaching the class, it will change your life. And the cool thing is we've made it super easy for instructors nowadays. We've done all the videos. We do everything where you can simply watch the videos and head out for a run. All you really need is a room and a TV and a room full of people.
Yeah.
And it will literally, you'll make new friends. It'll change their lives. It'll change your life in the process. It'll give you a whole different outlook on this sport because it does for everybody that teaches it. It did for me and it did for you.
Yep.
And it does for everybody that we know. So if you're out there listening and the Lord's laid it on your heart maybe to do more with this sport, because let's be honest, this can be a pretty selfish sport, but it makes it way better when you turn around and you give back to other people, help them enter this sport, help your community by showing people how to run. And the 5K challenge is exactly how you can do that. And we can all do it together in this next 5K challenge coming up in, I want to say it's June. I'll have to check that and get back with everybody on this next podcast. Or you can go to the website and check that out. But go to runforgod.com and find out more about it.
Yeah, I've had a couple of conversations recently for folks that have contacted me and say, okay, tell me how I get this thing started.
Right.
So if you've got some questions, you can always email us and ask some questions. But here's the beauty of the 5K challenge. We give you all the pieces. If you're a Run Club member, you have everything that you need just as a Run Club member. And we want you to mold it to the community that you have.
Sure.
So your community may look completely different than the community that I have in Cohutta.
Yeah.
And there may be a whole different angle that you have on the way that you organize your class and carry it out.
I mean, a good example, Dean, and by the way, it is June. I just looked, is the start of the next kind of nationwide 5K challenge that we would love for you to join. But a good example is, I always did this whenever I teach the class. I teach it in my church in a room with a TV, and we have people who teach it at community centers. Mm-hmm. We have some people that teach it at schools. Your location can change. The size of your classes. I've had classes as small as 20 people, and I've had classes as big as 200 people. That's completely up to you. Maybe you're not comfortable with the idea of having 200 people and you being in front of them. Well, limit the class. Say, okay, we're gonna have 20 registrations, and that's all that can come. It's really, we give you the curriculum and the content to be able to teach, but we want you to do it in a way that you're comfortable with and fits with your community. Maybe you can't. Maybe your church doesn't have a room on a Wednesday night that you can use. Maybe you go to the community center or to a local school or even a local park. If you've got a laptop computer that you can open up and everybody can see and hear, there's really, the sky's the limit on how you do it. Yeah. But the point is, we've given you everything to do it.
Yeah. you know, the way that I did my favorite class that I ever taught was the one where I walked through my neighborhood. I made up some flyers and I went door to door in my neighborhood and I knocked on doors and I said, I want to invite you. And so it was pretty cool because I got a chance to meet my neighbors as well.
Sure.
You know,
I mean, that's a dying art.
Yeah.
People knowing their neighbors.
It really is. So I got to meet my neighbors. Several of them came out and took place in the class. I recruited some teachers from the elementary school that's right down the block from my church. And so there's lots of different ways to go about this thing, and it's fun.
Yeah, and it's simple to get started. You can make up some flyers like you did. You can do some posters. We actually have all this stuff on the downloads, on the instructor downloads. But basically, your new participants, they sign up to be a member of Run Club, and then they have access to everything. You're not having to email stuff out gone are the days of having to email out flyers and, you know, make copies and all that. Everything is on Run Club. So, you know, for every family that joins, they will need to join Run Club, and then they have access to everything. So if they miss a night, then you're not trying to get them all the information. They simply log on and watch it for themselves. And all the while you're doing that, your life is being changed by teaching it. Your students' lives are being changed by getting healthy. You're supporting a ministry that wakes up literally every single day trying to figure out how to share the gospel with a lost and dying world through the sport of running. And that's where the important part is that we don't talk about a whole lot. But the things that we're doing while everybody is doing their classes, we're trying to find ways to penetrate this sport with the gospel. And thank God we've been successful at that through the years. And we want to continue to be successful at doing that. But we can't do it without the support. Yes, we take donations, but our largest support by far is Run Club. Yeah. It's what powers this ministry now. And I thank God that we made this shift a few years back. And COVID kind of helped us make that shift. And so if there's any good thing that come out of COVID, it is Run Club. Yeah. Bottom line. So yeah, think about it, pray about it, talk to your family about it. But join us this June for the 5K challenge.
What could be better than sharing more Jesus and helping to create a more fit world?
Yeah, absolutely.
As a mom, I want to make sure we choose a cereal that's not entirely derived from sugar. Their car seats have to be nationally CPS certified, and their first car has to have every possible safety feature known to man. I just want to do my best to make sure that they're safe. One thing I don't have to worry about is the content they hear on J Radio. Not only do they love the music, but I know it's only going to be a positive message that I would approve of. Now, if I could just figure out how to get my youngest from sticking everything up his nose.
Sign up at jradio.com and download the new J Radio app in your app store.
All right, we're back. Thursday nights. Thursday nights are fun, aren't they?
They are.
We have.
It was fun watching you and Angie the other night, and she had a little bit of technical difficulties, and she couldn't hear you, but we could all hear her.
Yeah,
we could all hear her and Patrick saying, "What's wrong? We can't get the."
Yeah,
but
fortunately, they didn't do or say anything that.
As they wouldn't.
No, of course they wouldn't.
But yeah, it was kind of funny. I mean, you just gotta love technology. Who knows why that happened? I mean, it just out of the blue. And what was funny is I got on the phone with Angie or Patrick, and evidently Patrick had his phone on speakerphone, and I could hear myself.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're listening to this, we don't have a team of engineers behind the scenes. So what you see is what you're really getting on those Thursday nights, as well as right here. Yeah. People probably assume that we have some engineers and people off camera right here. Nope, we have a bookshelf right there. And so, you know, if you were here for the weekend, there was actually some people here, and I think they were really surprised. Yeah. They thought this was something bigger than what it really is. And that's flattering in one sense, but it's the reality is we've just figured out. We were talking about the videos just before the shoot here and how it seems like they've gotten better, and we've just kind of tweaked things through the years. we've figured it out. We've, as they say here in the South, we've kind of redneck engineered things. And I'm proud of that. I like that we've kind of done it ourselves, and we've had some great help along the way.
We have.
You know, some people who have really, Jared up at J103, he's really given us some good pointers through the years. So we consult people that know what they're talking about.
Right.
You know, regularly.
Absolutely.
But we don't have a team of people here in the studio with us, like some other podcasts.
Yeah, you bring up Jared. You know, Jared told us what we needed to do from a sound standpoint. He told us what we needed to do really early.
Yeah.
And then it took us another 6 months to
figure out what he said.
To get around to it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes we hear it and we internalize it and then we ignore it. But then later on we go, oh, there was that thing.
We think, we can probably do that better. You know, never mind what the sound engineer actually said about sound. We think, let's try this. So, you know, we're that kid that we eventually get it. It just takes a few hard knocks. So thanks for listening, by the way.
Well, let me say this. We're about to share somebody's story, and we are starting to get thin on stories. So we need some of you guys out there. I know there's a bunch of you out, because I talked with a bunch of you during the 5K weekend who have great stories, who haven't shared them, haven't written them down. You're like, I'm not sure how to write them down. Just write it down. Just write it down like you'd say it.
Sure.
But we need some more stories. So share your story with us. So, you know, a lot of people ask, you were about to get to this 10K portion of our training. A lot of people ask, why do these workouts that we have in here? Why do anything other than easy runs? So what do we accomplish with doing things other than easy runs? Right? So there's a bunch of things that happen in there. One, not the least of which is variety is the spice of life, right?
Sure.
Doing something different makes it a little bit more exciting to me. Now, it does make it hurt a little bit more too, but that's another benefit, because getting outside of our comfort zone, we know that the more often we do that, the easier it becomes to do it, and that bleeds over into everything else that we do.
Sure.
And so and then you've got the idea that just fat burning, the faster running burns fat faster. If you're out there and you want to lose weight, then there's a good reason for those hard workouts right there. It's burning some more fat. And then just being more fit in general. You'll be more fit when you do this. And so tons and tons of reasons to do some of these workouts. So I want to encourage you, if you're worried about that, give it a try and do these workouts. And I think you'll enjoy it. I really do. Well, I like this week's story. This week's story, it's more of a helpful guide than a typical story. So that's kind of why I like this one, because it's different. So we ask you out there, when you share your story, be creative. Well, Sherry Evans is creative in the way that she shared hers. And so this is the name of her story is 5 Spiritual Lessons, Marathon Training. From December 2021, last weekend, from December 2021, this was an entry she had. Last weekend, I reached a milestone, my longest run to date. Although it took 6 hours and countless encouraging words from my husband, I did it. I ran 20 miles. God has taught me so much over the past year while training for the run, and I wanted to share with you the top 5 spiritual lessons I have learned along the way. Number 5, rest is important. I have learned that giving my body time to rest has been as important as getting my training runs done. Taking time to rest my body helped to prevent injury and burnout. Like our physical bodies, our spirits need periods of rest as well. Matthew 11:28-30 says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. You will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Number 4, it's not just about crossing the finish line, but what you did to get there. I will be so proud when I cross the finish line on January 9th. But I am most proud of the miles and miles that my husband and I have run in the darkness that no one else sees. All who put their faith in Christ are in a race with eternity as the finish line. What we do as we prepare that no one else sees is what truly matters. So Philippians 3:13-14. Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Number 3, you have to fuel your body frequently during long distances. If you want to go the distance, you have to properly hydrate and fuel your body. I quickly learned that just eating before a run was not enough. I had to eat throughout the run to have the energy to keep going. The same is true in our spiritual walk. Just eating God's Word on Sunday morning is not enough to make it through the week. You have to fuel your spirit every day. Matthew 4:4 says, "But he answered and said, It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." Number 2, it is so much easier when you're not doing it alone. Having my husband training right alongside me has been the greatest gift. There were many mornings when I would have just stayed in bed, but having him there motivated me to get up and head out. He keeps pace with me on every run, even though he can run much faster than I can. He is a patient and encouraging man. He believes in me even when I don't believe in myself. In our walk with the Lord, we weren't meant to do it alone. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12 says, 2 are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. Again, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Though one may be overpowered by another, 2 can withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Number 1, we are able to do so much more than we can imagine. The number 1 thing that I have learned through this journey is that I am capable of so much more than I ever imagined. And so are you. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in me. We serve a God who is able to do immeasurably more in and through us. Ephesians 3:20. Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. In 2022, I pray that you step out in faith and do something you never imagined possible. That is where you will meet the God who is immeasurably more. Update. I did it. Disney's Dopey, 48.6 miles, 4 races, 4 days.
Dean, you know, we've spent 12 years paralleling faith and endurance in all different ways. We've said it 100 different ways, thousands of times. But she summed it up right here. Yeah. I mean, we've been doing this for 12 years, and I couldn't have said it any better myself. Nope. How she just... And it's because it was so fresh on her mind. Yeah. I mean, she had just been through 52 weeks of marathon training. Obviously, she did much more than marathon training if she did the Dopey. But yeah, I mean, that's just 5 points to hammer home why this ministry works. Yeah. Why this comparison works, and why it's so much more than running. Yeah. I mean, yes, she finished the Dopey challenge. That's just a small part of what happened to Sherry through this process, and that's what's so encouraging. Yeah. To be able to sit here and for you and I to kind of have a front row seat to some of these stories. It's just it gives me cold chills when I read them. Yeah, yeah, it's a special thing, and the cool thing about doing what Sherry did here and what so many others did in the whole training for the marathon for the year is you prove to yourself that, number one, God is sufficient, that he's there and he's there when we need him, and he's there to strengthen us when we need it, but that he can help us get through things that we don't think we can. And it bleeds over into every part of our life. We're talking about running. Mm-hmm. As it relates to running, obviously it works, but it also works in your job. Sure. And it works in raising your kids. Mm-hmm. Everywhere it works. You know, I was just thinking about this, and it just hit me that my son this week has adopted a child, a 7-year-old girl. The 7-year-old girl has been in 10 different homes in her life. She's 7 years old, 10 different homes.
she's finally got a permanent home. They're going to need lots of strength.
Sure.
Because a lot of the reason why she was in 10 different homes is because she's difficult.
Right.
And there's some challenges to raising her. But they feel the need to do that mainly because she's been in their home long enough that they realize that they can do more than they think they can.
Sure.
And
well, I mean, take their situation and take all 5 of these points.
Yeah.
It lines right up with their situation.
That's right.
It lines up with pretty much every situation you can find yourself in.
That's right.
Where you need faith to get through it. Gosh, I mean, you could take and make this into a small book and hand it out and not even call it Run for God, and it applies.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing. That's the cool thing about this sport is the principles we learn here just bleed over to everything.
Yeah,
I mean, it really is.
Again, Ephesians 3:20. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. In this passage, Paul is telling the Ephesians that he's praying for them, and he wants them to feel the spiritual power that he feels through Christ. And it's kind of, I don't know that you could call it a prayer, but it's kind of the end of a prayer. It's kind of Paul's wishes for the Ephesians at this point in time. And he's talking about God, the one, now to him who is able to do immeasurably more. That's God. And he really can do, again, we talked about it from a running standpoint, but it's so much more than that. And we've seen God work in ways that we can't explain. Mm-hmm. You know, when you think about, we just had Todd here, and we talked about Todd's story. God can do so much more than we limit him, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because I was about to say something and you brought up Todd, and it just hammers home the point that I was about to make. But how many times, you know, we say that God is there. We say that Jesus can work wonders in our life, and that is true. But many times what is the number one reason that we never get to experience that? It's us. Yeah. We get in our own way sometimes. We try to do things in our own power. We were just kind of joking about the sound engineering here, and we have somebody of authority telling us how to do it, and we try to do it our own way. How many times do we do that exact same thing with God? And so many times God lets us get to the end of our rope. Todd's story, he talks about why did it, so many people have asked him, why do you think God waited so long to heal you? And he said, because if it would have happened any sooner, the doctors would have took credit for it. Yeah. And, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, in the context of eternity, they're not necessarily bad. Yeah. A bad day, a bad diagnosis. I mean, the worst thing that we can think about in the context of eternity is not bad. Yeah. Sometimes God needs to get us there so that he can start to work. Yeah. Get us out of the way, because we are always, not sometimes, we are always the problem. Yeah. The thing about Todd's story that strikes me, I mean, obviously the moment that he was healed and all of that stuff is absolutely incredible. One of the parts about his story that he kind of glosses over to some degree that is so impressive to me is that Todd bought a pair of new running shoes every year while he couldn't run. And, we look at that and you would think, okay, the first year he bought those shoes and then he didn't use them. Mm-hmm. God didn't answer his prayer, right? That's what we think. That's the way we look at it. When we feel led to do something, that God has us do something, we think, well, God didn't show up. And the truth is that God's there. God never left.
No, God never left, but he was faithful to continue to buy that new pair of shoes every year. And eventually he got to use those shoes. Yeah. And God just wanted to see his faithfulness. Yeah. And he proved to God how faithful he was. And boy, I'll tell you what, it's like Job to me, his whole story.
And we're talking about Todd's story. And some people may be on here saying, who's Todd? Well, we understand some of you may not know who Todd is. And in the coming weeks, we're going to be sharing Todd's story on here, but it's an incredible story. If you're listening to this right now and you don't know who he is, stay tuned. We'll be sharing a little bit more of his story coming up. We have shared it in the past, some of his story, but we'll be focusing on it some here in the next few weeks.
Well, and if you're inclined, you can go find Dead Man Running Movie.
DeadmanRunningMovie.com. Yeah.
Another scripture passage from Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
You know, Dean, this is one of my favorite verses. This is, I talked really all of last year about peace, peace, and trying to get to the place where, because there is not much peace in this world today. Let's be upfront about that. There's just, everything's an emergency, everything's a crisis. When you turn on any news channel, it's alert. It's always the opposite of peace. Yeah. And I've talked many times about we've got to find time to do nothing, and this is the verse that goes along with that. Yeah. God knows we're weary. God knows we're burdened. God knows we're worn out many times. And he's always there waiting. He's not going to force us to do anything.
That's right.
But this is so comforting to know that at any time we can go to him and find that he is the Prince of Peace. God is love. God is peace. But so many times we allow our attention to be captured by the flashes, the distractions, the alerts, how many alerts do we have on our phone nowadays? Yeah. I mean, think about it. Everything is fighting for our attention, but Scripture's clear in Matthew. I'm the opposite of that. He's the opposite of that. He's the opposite. He's counterculture everything right now.
Yeah.
And that's comforting.
That's a good way to put it. One of the things that struck me about this particular verse this time, how these things hit us. We've talked about this one several times, and for that reason, it really has become one of my favorite verses as well. But it struck me that when we get in that yoke, you're talking about plowing a field, right? And that's the illustration that he's using here from that day. We're plowing a field. Well, the thing is he's already in the yoke. We have to get in the yoke with him. He doesn't come to get in our yoke. We go to get in his. And so we can be out there. What we often do is we're out there plowing our own field all the time, going, Jesus, why aren't you in the other side of this yoke? And the truth is he's in the yoke. We're just on the wrong field.
Right. And, that's a good way to put it.
And we need to be in the other field with him, plowing the field he has for us, because that's going to be the field that's going to yield the biggest harvest.
David Hendricks always said, I want to find out where God's working. Yep. I want to find out where he's plowing. Yeah. I want to go there.
That's it. Philippians 3:13-14. Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Man, it strikes me that if there were one person on the face of the earth who could say at the end of their life, man, I'm awesome. It would have been Paul. Right. And yet he's toward the end of his life here, and he's saying, I'm not there yet. I still got a long way to go.
He called himself the chief of all sinners.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he wrote half the New Testament, and he is calling himself the chief of all sinners. There's some lessons to be there, lessons in humbleness, because we do it. We get to the point sometimes where we think, oh, I'm really going to help God out with this. I mean, just think about how silly and arrogant that sounds, but we do it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we do it whether we know we're doing it or not. We have nothing.
Yeah.
And God is everything.
Yeah.
And the quicker that we can understand that, the better off we're going to be. But so many times we think we have the answers. We know how to run this sound better than the sound engineer. And it's so frustrating to think about it, because every day in some way I make that statement about God.
Yeah.
That's being completely transparent.
Yeah.
And it's arrogance. It really is. It's arrogance.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it. He in this verse, he's talking about moving toward that goal consistently. We talk about that all the time, about being consistent and how important that is. And it's important to both our running, our spiritual lives. We've talked on here before. I've shared my struggles with my temper and anger in the past and how much better I am at that. That didn't happen overnight. That's been a slow, gradual thing that's gotten better and better over time. And that's kind of what he's talking about here. And if you want to be a better runner, what do you have to do? Well, you got to run every day. Well, or something like that.
You got to
right?
stick to the plan.
You got to stick to the plan, and you got to keep doing that. And it applies to our spiritual lives as well. You have got to keep doing all the little, we talk about all the little things, doing the things, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for our spiritual lives.
But you got to be honest with yourself. It's funny you mentioned the workouts I was talking to an athlete just yesterday, and there was a workout on the schedule, and the athlete said the day before, I'm kind of feeling tired. I don't know if I, need to do that workout the next morning. I said, okay, whatever, that's fine. Well, then yesterday afternoon, I'm talking to that same athlete, and I said, I just kind of said it in passing. I said, well, you skipped the workout that was prescribed for this morning. And the athlete was like, whoa. I didn't skip it. I said, yeah, you did. No, I didn't skip it. We decided that I wasn't going to do it. I said, but you skipped it. Yeah. Whether you decide the day before or not, you skipped it. And, there was a list of reasons why that athlete didn't do it.
It may or may not have been the best thing.
All of which could have been avoided. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
But this guy didn't like that I used the term skipping the workout. And how many times do we do that?
Oh, all the time.
I mean, with God's word, I didn't get my reading in this morning because, and we rationalizing it out. But God's looking down and saying, I missed you this morning. Yeah. I was there.
Yeah.
Where were you?
Wow.
And we got to be honest with ourselves, because I do that same thing too. I mean, I'm sitting here talking about this athlete, but I do the exact same thing with my quiet time. You've heard me talk about, I read in the morning, and then as a family, we read the same thing at night. And every once in a while, I have to say to my family at night, I didn't read this morning because blah, 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 blah. But the truth is, I skipped it.
Yeah.
And we don't like to hear that blunt, harsh. My kids will tell you I tend to be blunt. Yeah. And I'll say, I'll tell an athlete you skipped. But that's the starting point for a great relationship with Christ, is being honest with ourselves. When we mess up, say you messed up.
Yeah.
Own it.
It's the same way.
Go to God.
It's like a marriage, right? It's like a marriage. What are the most successful marriages? Well, ones where you talk.
Right.
And when I say something or I do something that I shouldn't have with my wife, well, then I need to go to her and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I messed up.
I mean, how would it go with your wife if you said, honey, I forgot your birthday yesterday, but I was just busy, and you started rationalizing it. Yeah. That's going to go nowhere.
Yeah.
You need to just go to her and say, honey, I forgot. I'm sorry.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know how we got off on this subject.
And of course, my wife would be like, oh, yeah, I get it. I know that you're Dean. No, don't worry about it. Because she knows. But the thing about it is that the reason why she would do that is because she knows me, because we have communicated over the years. And I've shared with her my vulnerability of, I have a hard time remembering stuff. Yeah. And she knows that. And so she's sympathetic to it rather than chastising me for it, which I deserve sometimes.
Yeah.
I think about, from an athlete perspective too, which athletes are the most successful ones? Well, they're the ones that want to do, the things that all of those little things that get them to that goal. They're the ones that don't have the excuse, that don't skip the workout. And the reason they don't skip the workout is because they do all of those things to prepare every week, and they're always ready for that workout.
The best athletes are the ones that are always preparing for the next workout.
That's right. Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, that's right. Question. What has been one thing that has most surprised you in your running journey?
That I like to walk.
Yeah, that's pretty.
I mean, that has been something that I never, until last year, I would have said, no, that's not true. And so, you know, I don't know if everybody on here listening knows, but, you know, I kind of ran the 5K challenge, and now I'm walking again. I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth through this year. That's the thing that's most surprised me really in a long time through this sport, is that I like the walking side of it.
Yeah, I still remember our first conversation of where that realization hit you, and I
struggled with it.
Yeah,
I really struggled with it.
But then at one point, it was like it just hit you that I'm really enjoying this, and it's okay.
Yeah,
and that was a cool revelation, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. I guess for me, you know, just the whole Run for God thing and being a part of it, and knowing that this ministry was started in an area that I moved to, well, before the ministry started, but that I just happened. There's no reason why Dean Thompson is the person who needs to be a part of this ministry that you started, other than the fact that God put all that together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for me, from a running standpoint, that's been if you would have told me, and I've said this before, if you'd have told me, 20 years ago, when you're 56 years old, you're going to be part of a ministry about running, I would have been like, what, are you crazy?
Yeah.
But look what God did.
Yeah. So,
it's pretty cool. And then, of course, from another thing that's really surprised me is this whole diet thing. If you don't know, I changed to a plant-based diet a couple of years ago, basically because we had somebody on our podcast who shared how you go about a plant-based diet. And I thought, well, I'm going to try it for 30 days. Well, that 30 days has become nearly 2 years now. And I
but
feel
your
so
only
much better.
weakness is when I fire up the smoker.
I am. Yeah. I'm not as strict. The first time I tried it,
You're not a purist.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. I know that there's a benefit to it, but it's a lot like so many people think, well, if I don't do this little thing, or if I don't do that little thing, it's the end of the world. And that's where, for me, it's not the end of the world.
You're not legalistic in
No.
your diet. I mean, you stick to it. I can vouch for that. You are. I would call you a vegan.
Yeah.
Except for
Special
when
occasions.
I put barbecue in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I'm traveling with the team.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I'm traveling with the team and they want to stop at Chick-fil-A.
Right. It's God's chicken.
You gotta have some chicken.
You have to have some of that.
It's just the way it goes. It surprises me how much, thinking about this whole concept, how much people hold themselves back.
Yeah.
And we had a great example this past weekend. There's a girl that runs with us. We got to get Catherine on the podcast at some point in time. Catherine, she's now a two-time All-American, and she has run. I've always said she could probably run a 2:15, 800 meters, but the fastest she had ever run is 2:22. Now that sounds like it's close, but it's not. It's not even in the ballpark. And I've been telling her that it's there. Well, this past week she was in a race, and there was a girl in there who had run 2:15 before, and she just got it in her mind that I don't care, because we've talked about this over and over again. I don't care if you're just crawling across the finish line because you died. I want to see you go out really hard. Well, she did. And she hung right with that girl. And then with 300 meters to go, she pulled away from her and just blew her away, beat her by 2 seconds, which is blowing them away in the 800 meters. And she ran 2:17.
Wow.
And just that's a big 5 seconds. For somebody who's been running for a long, long time. But all it took was her mind getting wrapped around the idea. We so limit ourselves all the time in the things that we do. And you're probably, if you're out there listening, you're probably limiting yourself in some way by.
Well, it kind of goes into question number 2 here. What's your big obstacle? And it's me.
Yeah.
It always is us.
Mm-hmm.
We're our biggest obstacle many times.
Yeah. Yep.
It just goes back to the mental side of, and it's funny how, I guess nowadays more people are talking mental, but you hear it in other, and I can't even, I'm trying to bring up an example right now, but you're hearing more and more about the mental side of business.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you're starting to, used to, this always has been a big topic in endurance sports because it's just kind of obvious that it is, but you're starting to hear this same conversation in all other areas. And it's really cool to hear because it is so true. Yeah. We're often our biggest obstacle.
We are. For me, my biggest obstacle, aging, has been it's a big deal. And I know there's a lot. Yeah, but you get
those new age groups every 5 years.
That's true. Every 5 years, I get a new age group.
That's an obstacle knockdown.
That's right. Yeah. But, it just hurts more and more as time goes. I was trying to do a track workout yesterday, doing some short, fast stuff, just a little bit of it. And, I remember those times when it felt good to run fast, that you felt like everything was oiled up and everything was like a machine and you felt good. And now it's just you. Oh.
You feel like you need to go get your endorphin pump reprimed or something.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
The endorphins just aren't there anymore.
Yeah. But on the other side of that is it an obstacle? Yeah, it's an obstacle, but God gives us obstacles for a reason. Mm-hmm. And I think it's great to overcome those obstacles. Sure. And so, I've shared before, obstacles aren't a big thing for me just because my mother told me when I was young I could do anything, and I believed her. Mm-hmm. And I really, we need more of that. I try to pass that along to folks as much as I can because we've got to get past this point of limiting ourselves and think bigger about things. And I see so many people who don't. Mm-hmm. And it just breaks my heart to see it. And it's just the way things are. I remember an obstacle of one of the local guys here. You know who I'm talking about. I worked for years to beat that one guy. Oh, my goodness. It was.
Is he still running, by the way?
As far as I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't seen him on the race course in a long time. But I finished second in so many races behind that guy. Oh, my gosh.
I remember the day you beat him.
Oh, it felt so good. That was so satisfying. I remember it too, because I remember that it was a 5K, and I remember there's a big, long straightaway in that 5K that's like a half mile long to finish that race. And I remember going on that straightaway, and I remember hurting so bad and just being so determined that I'm not slowing down. I'm going to keep pressing harder. And I probably hurt about as bad in that last half mile as I've hurt in any race I've ever run. And I remember finishing and turning around and looking behind me, and I'd done it. But, I also remember a time before that where I had an opportunity in a longer race, in a 10K race, where we got halfway through the race, and I realized he's not that far ahead of me. And so for that 5th mile, I really, really hammered it and closed that gap down to like 3 seconds. And then I failed. I didn't beat him. But it was a big deal. It was a big confidence booster anyway. And I was so glad that I tried to do it anyway, even though it didn't work out. And you got to leave yourself open to opportunities when they present themselves.
Yeah, we were talking about Landon before the podcast.
Yeah.
It's Landon's my younger son, and he's really got into track, but he's never had that super competitive bone, but we saw it come out night before last. He's been wanting to break 5 in the mile, and he's been so close, and I could see it the past few track meets that he ran 5:02, 5:04, 5:05, and I could see it welling up inside of him. He really wanted it. Well, he went out, and one of the fastest guys, in this region he was lining up with him for the mile, and Landon went to pass him with like 300 to go, and Landon did pass him pretty commandingly. the guy ultimately beat him, come back and beat him right at the finish line. But Landon finally broke 5. And that was this is exactly what you're thinking. I think for Landon, and he doesn't like for me to say this, but his biggest limiter up until 2 days ago was himself.
Yeah.
Whether he didn't think he could do it, or I don't know what it is, but Landon decided 2 days ago this is going to happen today, and it did.
Yeah.
And that's always fun to see that light bulb in people.
Yeah, it is.
Whether it's Landon doing that or somebody completing their first 5K.
Yeah.
I mean, to see when they come across the finish line, you can see that light bulb just blinking like crazy. That okay, I've got this figured out now. And you see all those dots connect, and that's satisfying to see that, to watch that.
Yeah. Yeah, and just in case Lane is listening to this, what was Lane's mile time when he was a sophomore in high school? I wonder. Do you remember?
Well, he broke 5 in the 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was
But he probably was still in the 440s. He wasn't
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I can pull it up.
Landon's not far off of him.
Yeah.
And they got a championship meet next week. Landon's he's gonna get down close to 450 next week. I'm sure of it.
So.
Yep. And last question. What is your immeasurably more? I read this question. I thought about our church. You know, our church, I've mentioned on here before, it's growing so fast right now. We struggled for years, and we've talked about over and over and over about kids, that we need kids in our building, that our church is going to die because we have no kids in our building. And we tried one thing after another to try to get kids into the building, and we just never could get over that hump. Well, now we literally have more kids at our church on Wednesdays than we have adults. It's like God just said, okay, it's time. To me, that was immeasurably more, because we had worked on it very purposefully for years. And you may look at that 20 years worth of work of trying to figure out how to make it happen, and you may think you failed during that 20 years and that, well, you finally succeeded. But I think all of that work over those 20 years was God's way of saying, when it happens, it's going to be glorious.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that was immeasurably more, just watching it just explode the way that it has.
Yeah, I think for me in this ministry, it's the people who have come to know the Lord, not through anything you or I doing. And that's the humbling part is, you know, when people ask what we do, we say we work for Run for God, and we're here on the day to day, and we're, you know, it's real tempting to say that we're doing things, and we are doing things. I mean, we're facilitating getting all this together, but the real work, the life-changing work, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And that's my immeasurably more is when I see things like, you know, a few weeks ago when we had the Run for God weekend, that was very humbling. To see all those different people from all walks of life, from all locations and backgrounds and ages coming together. And yeah, I mean, we put a schedule together, but God made that happen. There is absolutely no credit that we can take for these eternal changes in people. Yeah, I mean, we're coach. We sit here and talk about running. We give people pointers on how to become a better runner. But the real change that takes place in Run for God is not running. It's not walking. It's when people start to connect those dots between the things we're teaching and running and the things God has taught, Jesus taught in his earthly ministry about our walk with him. And we basically just make that introduction, and God takes it from there. And that's immeasurably more. Amen.
That is true. And you know, the whole immeasurably more thing, I can't help but think about heaven.
Oh, yeah.
And how, you know, I mean, the Bible basically says we can't imagine how great heaven is and how wonderful it's going to be there. And I can't wait for that time when I got a pretty good imagination. I can imagine pretty fantastic.
It's fun to imagine that.
Yeah, but it's going to be even better than that.
Yeah, whatever we think, it's going to be way better.
Yep. At Run for God, we care about more than just your exercise. We care about your relationship with God, and we believe that the music you listen to while you run can help to build your relationship with God. That's why we partner with J Radio. J Radio offers a variety of positive and Christian playlists to listen to while you run. You can find a playlist that is put together by our Run Club members just like you in the Run for God station on J Radio. All right, we're back, and you know what? It is championship time on the track. We talked about that, how they've got the region championships for the high school coming up. Our college conference championships are coming up, and what's cool about that is you got all these athletes who have worked for all of this time, and this is the time that they get the payoff for all of that hard work, and it's so much fun to see them do that. Of course, we talked about Becca and how she can't finish up this year. I had another girl who, during a long run, she stepped off of a sidewalk and twisted her. She's got a sprained foot. She may not be. It's her senior year. It's the last meet.
Who is that?
Alex.
Okay, yeah.
And it's breaking my heart for her, but I'm hoping that she's able to go anyway. So I don't know. We will see. Maybe she can. I know that they're working really, really hard to get her well.
Yeah.
And then I have another. We got another one she's got like a bruised heel, and she's a steeplechaser.
Who is that?
Haley.
Okay.
She's got this bruised heel, and she's like, I'm going to run. So that the doctors have asked her to be in a boot when she's not running, but then she runs. So she runs and then puts the boot back on.
Because that makes sense.
Because these doctors, I just don't know. All right, it's a time for Dean's Thoughts, and that's a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith. So how about a challenge this week? I know you like challenges.
I love them.
Yeah. And so this one is for everybody out there who wants to eat healthier. It's called a 2-week challenge. When I was young, I was terrified of needles. I would do all I could to avoid a shot in the arm, the hip, or anywhere else on my body. My anxiety over injections was so bad that I once passed out after taking a shot of penicillin. To me, there wasn't enough of a payoff to make it worth it. The idea of getting better was completely crowded out by the anxiety of the shot. So, to relieve myself of the angst, I began giving blood every time the bloodmobile appeared at work. I thought that someone may need blood, and it would be worth it if it saved someone's life. It worked. Shots no longer bother me because I understand that the little pinprick is not bad compared to what may happen without the shot. That brings me to my point on a completely different topic. I don't think a lot of people realize how bad their diet makes them feel. I was listening to a friend recently who said that he had been eating very clean for a couple of weeks, and then he ate some greasy food one day. The food made him feel really bad for a day and a half. But here's the thing. That greasy food always made him feel bad. He just didn't know it because he always felt bad. He had never tried to eat cleanly in the past because the hassle of changing his diet crowded out the idea that maybe it would make him feel better. And that brings me to my challenge to you. Set 2 weeks aside. It would be best if it was 30 days, but 2 weeks is enough to feel a difference. Eat only whole foods that are good for you. Eat on a regular schedule and eat an appropriate amount at each meal. Don't cheat. Eat as cleanly as you can for those 2 weeks. Give your body a chance to get rid of the toxins caused by the bad diet. At the end of that 2 weeks, eat a few slices of pizza and see how you feel. My bet is that you will not feel very well. If you want to eat better, you need to be able to connect the good feeling that comes from eating well with the difficulty of changing to a diet that is not as convenient as your current habits. The problem is that eating one good meal doesn't usually result in a large contrast in how you feel. But One bad meal after a steady diet of good meals will almost certainly be felt. Try it. 2 weeks of nothing but healthy, good meals in proper proportions. It could change the way you look at food. In the same way, it is important to look back at our lives and circumstances so that we can see how God has orchestrated all of it. When we go through tough times, it's much easier to bear when we know that God is right there with us. The way we know is that we can see how He worked things out in the past, and we can lean on the fact that God has a plan for each of us. Once again, it is all about connecting the bad circumstances with the positive experiences that we have had in the past when things didn't look so good. When I go to the doctors these days, I like to ask the doctor for a shot because I know that I will get well faster. It's a far cry from the way I thought about things when I was young, but I have an understanding that the temporary pain is worth it. I also know that eating well makes everything I do better. I've proven it over time. It makes eating clean much easier now. If you haven't already done it, you should try it sometime. And never forget that God works all things for good for those who love Him. Connect all of those feelings with the positive outcomes you're bound to have, and everything could just come together for you.
It's a great story, Dean. You know, it reminds me of, we've talked about this on here before, that it's kind of the same principle when you make an effort and you kind of set aside time every day. For me, it's in the mornings to get in God's Word, spend your quiet time. And you do that for a period of weeks, and then you miss one. Yeah. It's the same thing. You feel it. Yeah. You know it. And that's very comforting. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a great story. You've kind of convicted me to eat really good. Of course, I don't eat bad. No. But I have my indulgences. Yeah. Everybody on this podcast knows that Reese's are my weakness, my indulgence. It's the food I keep hidden from my kids. I think everybody out there has something that they've keeping hidden from their kids. Mine's Reese's peanut butter cups because they'll steal them. Yeah. And but yeah, good. They are. Yeah. But you're right. It's so many times we don't know the contrast because we've never made a contrast. That's right. And it's a good point.
And creating that contrast will let us, it's more motivating. It's just like you said, when you've done that Bible study consistently over time and then you don't do it and you feel the consequences of it, it makes you, the next day, you're like, I got to get back to it. You know, it's the same thing with running. It's the same thing with everything that we do.
Well, I was just sitting here thinking about running. Running is almost the opposite, though. Running, you know, you take several days off and you don't really feel a difference. But when you go to do that next run after having some time off, then you're like, oh, yeah, I might have took too much time off.
Yeah, that's true.
So it kind of works in the opposite, but it's the same principle. Yeah. It's the contrast.
Yeah. Yeah, my first experience with this eating thing, though, actually happened several years ago because Debbie and I did this. It was called Body for Life. I don't know. A lot of people have heard about it. It was really, really popular at one time. It was a 12-week program, and the idea was you eat really, really clean. You eat 6 meals a day, and they're all really clean meals. And then you do pretty intense exercise, and the way the diet was laid out was you got one cheat day. And so it was designed that way. 6 days of being as close to perfect with your diet as you can be. And then 1 day of eat whatever just whatever the heck you want to, just anything. And we did that. Oh my gosh, we would feel so bad on that cheat day. We would just feel awful.
You felt bad and good at the same time, though.
I don't know. I mean, we really did get to the point then that we were like, the pizza
tasted so good, felt so bad.
Yes, it was not worth it. And so that was my first time at that. But then, we slowly got back into eating poorly again. But when I took some real time to work on this plant-based diet, and then connected the results of that diet with how I felt, how I was running, everything felt better. My energy level was better. I just had my daughter-in-law, actually, they've decided they're going to eat a plant-based diet. So they've been doing it for about a week, and she's already talking about how much better she feels. And they don't eat well. And so it's been a big contrast for them. So try it out. It's worth it. It's worth it. And if you're listening to this, in the famous words of Mitchell Hollis, I would say, I dare you. Because it'll make a difference.
Do you struggle with motivation to exercise? Are you looking for something that will challenge you and inspire and motivate you? The Run for God Run Club is just what you need to get off the couch and on your way to a fitter, healthier you. Stop trying to get into better shape and do it with the help and inspiration of thousands of others who are going through the same challenges you face. Whether you are participating in the Couch to Marathon Challenge or any of our other challenges, or you're just looking for a daily pick-me-up to get active, join the Run for God Run Club today. You can join for as little as 27 cents a day. So what are you waiting for? Get started today at runforgod.com.
All right, so we had the Boston Marathon this weekend.
We did,
and it was awesome. Did you see any of it?
No, you know me. Dan.
I know.
I don't watch running. I'll
hopeful.
Catch the highlights. And
I was hopeful that you'd seen it.
Yeah.
It was spectacular. Two
when
completely different races. It was Monday. Monday. Yeah.
Right. Is that Patriots Day? Is that what
Patriots
they call
it? Yeah. In Massachusetts. Yeah. And the two races couldn't have been more different. The men had 15 guys all in the lead at like 21, 22 miles. Just a big, huge pack. Yes. This was the best field that they had ever assembled for the Boston Marathon. It was crazy good quality field. And then Evans Chibet just completely destroyed that pack at 22 miles. He threw in a 4:26 mile.
It's mind-boggling.
Yes. He ran the 5K between 35K and 40K. He ran in 13:55.
Wow.
And just destroyed everybody and basically ran away with it. And it was unbelievable to watch. I mean, it looked like he was sprinting. It was crazy.
He was.
Yeah. But then I noticed, too, that there was the guy who led the whole thing last year, for more than past 20 miles last year. He was in that lead pack during most of that time. And when it broke up, he fell back behind. But there was another American, Scott Fauble, who came up and ran through the pack. I don't know where he was for most of the race. He fell off early. He wasn't part of that big pack. But he wound up finishing 7th overall and running a PR at Boston, which is not a PR course. And it was pretty cool. He had a change of coaches last year, so apparently it's agreeing with him. The women's race was one of the best Boston Marathon races of all time. It reminded me of the year Des Linden finished second, where it was her and I can't remember who it was, with a girl from Kenya, and they just ran shoulder to shoulder the whole way, and Des wound up losing by 2 seconds on the kick. Well, this race, they actually ran the 11 miles between. They ran the 11 miles between mile 5 and 16 in 56 minutes. Just crazy fast, and just broke the field apart. There were 4 of them that did that, and they stayed together for a while. And then it kind of got down to 2 over the last few miles. And I don't know what was going on, but they kept talking with each other. I don't know if one of them was mad but Perez Jepchirchir, who's the Olympic marathon winner, she won the New York Marathon as well last fall. She kept saying something, and then she would get behind this other lady named Ababel Yeshane, an Ethiopian. So it was an Ethiopian and a Kenyan battling with each other. They stayed in each other's pockets all the way to the finish line. At 25 miles, it looked like it was over. Perez Jepchirchir just put on a surge that was incredible and just opened up a 20-meter lead. But then Ababel just kind of closed it back up, and then she passed her. And then they went, I think there were 7 lead changes in the last mile. And they came down, and bottom line was they got 100, 200 meters from the finish line, and Jepchirchir just kind of had one more gear and kind of pulled away from her a little bit and won by like 2 seconds.
Wow.
It was just a fantastic race to watch.
So this may be a dumb question, was Sarah Hall in that race? Did she race?
I think she was supposed to run it, but I don't know what happened. Okay. She was never in the mix.
I was thinking I saw some of the buildup that she was supposed to run it, but I didn't know if she actually made it because I haven't seen anything in several weeks.
Well, they broke the field apart so early by doing that early surge that it made again, they were so different from the men's race because no Americans were in that top group because they went so fast so early.
Yeah,
so they were that 11 miles was run at 2:14 pace.
Wow,
so crazy fast. And then Edna Kiplagat. She's a Kenyan lady. She's just she's won a lot of marathons over the years. She's 42 years old. She finished 4th overall.
Now, how old is Sarah? Sarah's 41.
38.
Oh, I thought she was 40 or 41.
I think she was 37 during the Olympics. So, yeah. So anyway, Jepchirchir has won her last 5 marathons, so it's interesting. She's still 3 minutes slower than Bridget Koskai, who's the world record holder. It'd be interesting to see those two run together. And then I don't know how many people, the faithful Run for God folks might remember us. We had Ryan Shrum on a Thursday night one time. We interviewed him. Ryan Shrum ran that race, and he ran a 250.
Wow.
Yeah, Ryan is 53, 54 years old, and ran 250.
Wow.
It was a really good race for him. So he was top 30, I think, in his age group, which is great at Boston. So there you go. Boston Marathon. It was fantastic. It's probably worth going back and watching. We have a trivia question for this week, and I did not know this one. And it was very, very interesting. This one is worth researching. I'm telling you, if you're not answering these questions, you need to go look this one up because it is very interesting. What is the world's longest certified foot race?
I have no clue.
No, you don't. And you've never heard of it. You've never heard of this race, I guarantee you. And it's a crazy race. And we'll talk about it next week when we give the answer. But if you know the answer, and if you have to look it up, that's fine. But if you find the answer, send it to dean@runforgod.com, and you will win a Run Club mug.
Yeah.
So
those are a hot commodity.
Yes.
All right, listen, we're gonna go over this one more time real quick. June is the next kind of nationwide, worldwide virtual 5K challenge. Pray about it. Talk about it with your family. Think about it. If you're feeling the urge to do it, but you have doubts, do it anyway. This is going to be fun. This is kind of our new MO for this year and years going forward. Is we're going to do these pretty often where we can all do it together. Like I said, one just started back in April. It's going great for all the people that joined in for that one. Welcome. This is probably your 4th or 5th podcast maybe listening to. But it's awesome. It's going to be great. So go check it out. Go to runforgod.com. Click on upcoming challenges. By the time this podcast airs, it will be updated for the June class. So go check that out. Think about it, pray about it, and do it.
Yes. Every week I share a reason why running is so awesome. This is this week's reason. It is easy to get out of your comfort zone. A lot of people have to look for things to get out of their comfort zone. If you're a runner, you're doing it regularly.
Yeah.
And it's awesome because it helps us. We've talked about it in this podcast. That helps us get out of our comfort zone for everything else in life because we're used to getting out of our comfort zone. So we're getting out of our comfort zone. Awesome. And then our motivational thought of the week is this: run often, run long, but never outrun your joy of running. That comes from Julie Ipserding. She was a very popular runner back in the 80s. And very well said. I love that. Run often, run long, but never outrun your joy of running.
Ryan Hall had a book called The Joy of Running.
That's right.
And
Yep. We can find joy in running, and there's so many people, and I get it. I get people who aren't runners. There are people who are like, that's not what they enjoy doing.
We've got people on here that like walking.
Yeah, that's right.
Find the joy in whatever you do. That's the most important thing.
But find something physical to do.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
We all need that. We all need something. So, yep. All right. It's been a good week. And the next week's going to be even better because God is still on the throne.
That's right.
Yep. So until next week, may God bless every step of every run. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.